Hi everyone, this is Wendy from Market Analysis team of Jinko Solar. Today I will share you with some information in solar industry to help you better understand the situation of the industry in March 2025. Let's start from China. In March, the Jiangsu provincial government issued a notice on several policy measures to accelerate the comprehensive green transformation of economic and social development in Jiangsu province, accelerate the low-carbon transformation of energy supply, expand the application scenarios of distributed PV, and promote the large-scale and three-dimensional development of offshore PV. Implement the three major projects of green electricity entering Jiangsu, green electricity entering parks, and green electricity entering enterprises. By 2030, the installation of renewable energy generation in the province will reach about 100 million kilowatts, and the non-fossil energy consumption will account for about 25%. On February 27th, Aerotech, a representative enterprise of tracking mounts in the United States, released its latest financial report data. The U.S. market is mainly dominated by utility projects, and most of these projects use tracking mounts. As the leading enterprise of tracking mounts in the U.S., ARE's order and business performance directly reflect the demand situation of utility plants in the United States. Although affected by the decline in Brazilian market, the strong demand in Europe and the United States still led to an overall year-on-year increase of 10% in orders. If only looking at the US market, the growth rate of this indicator exceeded 60%. ARE once again emphasized in the financial report that the orders for utility projects in the United States exceeded expectations. At the same time, the IRA subsidies also caused ARE's overall gross profit margin in 2024 to increase by 6 percentage points year-on-year. On 4th March, the $7 billion Solar for All program has been unfrozen by the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, following a White House mandate to review a Biden-era climate spending. The project funds were quickly frozen by the EPA last month. Based on the current average price of residential system in the United States, this funding can support approximately 3 gigawatts of distributed PV installations. EPA worked expeditiously to enable payment accounts for Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and IRA grant recipients, so funding is now accessible to all recipients, the EPA wrote in a statement Tuesday. The Swiss Federal Council has passed the Secure Electricity Supply Act based on renewable energies. This legislation covers multiple areas, including PV development, adjustments to electricity bills, and incentives for energy storage. It aims to promote the widespread adoption of PV system, encourage self-generation and self-consumption of solar power on residential rooftops, and introduce flexible changes to electricity bills. By allowing users to adjust their electricity consumption based on grid load, the legislation seeks to relieve pressure on the power grid and foster the application of renewable energies. The Act ensures the revenue from PV power generation and sets minimum compensation standards. PV Magazine News, March 6. Ghana's Ministry of Energy and Green Transition is establishing a renewable energy investment and the Green Transition Fund. According to reports from the state news agency, the fund will support investments in renewable energy and local deployment of green technologies, while reducing the burden of electricity tariffs on state-owned institutions. Minister of Energy said that a bill to establish a renewable energy agency, which would oversee the fund, is undergoing technical review and will be submitted to the cabinet very soon. The minister said the government plans to invest fossil fuel revenue into renewable energy, including residential solar installation and solar-powered street lights. Ghana wants to implement competitive procurement exercise for renewable energy projects to help reduce the cost of power. Israel is easing its permitting process to promote rooftop solar installations in the country as it gets ready to add 100,000 new systems by 2030, which is 1.6 gigawatts, covering 15% of residential rooftops. On March 12th, its National Planning and Building Councils has approved the exemption of the need to have a building permit for solar PV installation from an electrical engineer. Instead, such a certificate can be procured from any licensed electrician who can ensure the system's compliance with safety and regulatory frameworks. The country's Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure is also getting ready to bring in exemption from construction permits for storage facility for residential buildings, expanding it to small storage facilities. The Council approved an amendment to the planning and building regulations to exempt the building permit requirement for storage facilities of up to 600 kilowatt-hours, covering an area of up to 5 square meters. PV Magazine News, March 10th, the Australian government, in conjunction with states and territories, has announced a list of renewable energy generation, storage, and transmission projects of national significance that stand to gain increased regulatory support as they maneuver through the approvals process. Projects included on the National Renewable Energy Priority List, released by the Department of Climate Change, Energy and Environment and Water, will benefit from a streamlined assessment and approval process under the Federal Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. The priority list adopts a faster-to-yes, faster-to-no approach. Identified projects will receive additional support and facilitation through regulatory and environmental processes. The first priority list, restricted to projects greater than 30 megawatts and scheduled for completion by the end of 2031, includes 32 renewable energy generation and storage projects across the national featuring solar, wind, battery, and pumped hydro technologies. If approved through Commonwealth, state, and territory regulatory planning and environmental processes, the projects could deliver an additional 16.5 gigawatt of generation and 6.3 gigawatt of storage capacity. On March 18th, Germany announced its latest installation figure in February. It added 1.5 gigawatt of PV installation, representing a year-on-year growth of 23% and a month-on-month growth of more than 20% compared to January. The new installation for the whole year is still expected to set a new record. Among them, utility projects accounted for 967 megawatt, nearly 80% of the total. Rooftop accounted for about 400 megawatt, and in addition, balcony PV added 24 megawatt of new capacity. Somalia's Ministry of Energy and Water Resources is searching for a developer for a large-scale hybrid solar plus storage project. On March 19th, the tender, initially announced in February with an April deadline, has been extended to May 5th. The tender details state that the project will encompass the design, supply installation, testing, and commissioning of a 55 megawatt solar plant with a 160 megawatt hours BESS. This project is part of Somalia's Accelerating Sustainable and Clean Energy Access Transformation Program, with funding provided by the World Bank. Earlier March, the Somalia government launched a separate tender for a 12 megawatt solar plant and 36 megawatt hours BESS in Berbera, with the same May 5th deadline for applications. On 20th March, South Korea headquartered diversified group OCI Holdings plans to establish a solar cell manufacturing plant in the U.S. with 2 gigawatt annual production capacity through its local subsidiary Mission Solar Energy. It aims to realize 1 gigawatt of solar cell production capacity under Phase 1 in the first half of 2026. During the second half of 2026, it will gradually increase the capacity by over 1 gigawatt to ultimately secure a total production capacity of 2 gigawatt. OCI will supply UFLPA-compliant polysilicon from its Malaysian subsidiary OCI Terrasas, which was previously called OCIM. Solar cells produced in the U.S. by MSE will benefit from the IRA's Advanced Manufacturing Production Credit of 4 cents per watt, according to the South Korean company. That's all for this month's sharing. Thank you.